Okay, so continuing on with percents. Yesterday we looked at the percent proportion, and that was if we are trying to find a missing piece of the question, we've got to find the percent, the part, or the whole. Then we're going to use that proportion to plug in the numbers that we have to solve that proportion, see what we need to find. We're going to be looking at the same types of questions today. We're just going to use a different method. This method is using an equation to find them instead of a proportion. And so the percent equation looks a little different. It's going to be a one-step equation that we're going to use. We can use this equation to find the missing part, which is labeled as P for this example. Percent is N and whole is W, but we're always going to use X whenever we write our equations, just so you know what goes where. But I'm also going to write it one other way, kind of going along with what we did yesterday. Is over of equals percent over 100. This would be is equals percent times of. So this is another way that you can write this. Think of it, might be a little easier based on the wording of the problems. Is equals percent times of, but this is the percent equation. And what's going to happen is we're going to be plugging in some of the numbers that they have, whether it's the part, the percent, or the whole, and we've got to find the missing piece, find whatever they need us to find. So that kind of is explained here in this example, in this slide. When using the percent equation, we're going to be given two parts of that equation, two different numbers, part or percent, part or whole, percent or whole, and then we've got to find the missing piece. And there are some keywords that will help us figure out what we're trying to find. The word is means equals, and so anytime you see the word is, you write equals. And then the word of means to multiply, remember, as well. So some of the words that come before or after is and of is going to help us kind of set up this equation. So a couple of other things before we look at some examples. A percent, remember, you've always got to convert that. Make it either a decimal or a fraction. So most of the time we convert percents to decimals. That's the easiest thing to use in an equation. And so we'll be always converting percents to decimals. Kind of going along with that, the part and the whole, you don't have to change those at all. Those are always just going to be regular numbers that you can keep. And then once we set up our equation, it's really just a one-step equation at that point. We either multiply or divide to figure out the missing variable. Okay, so using that, we're going to look at some examples. So I'm going to write the example like this: is equals percent times of. That's always a little easier to work with. So it says, what number is 12% of 150? What number is 12% of 150? So I've got my percent, and make sure you convert your percent to a decimal. So 12% would be 0.12. Remember to move your decimal point 2 times to the left. And so we're going to have equals 0.12, and then of 150, well, 150 is going to go in the place of. So 0.12 times 150 equals X. And so all we have to do is 150 times 0.12, and that's going to give us what X is, what the part is. So we'll go ahead and do that multiplication right here. And that's going to get us 18 when we move our decimal point 2 times. So X equals 18. 18 is 12% of 150. It's another way to put it. All right, so our next one, and this is going a little bit out of order of what's on your notes paper. So you'll need to skip. We're going to come back and we'll do the next question here in a second. But the next one we're going to look at, 21 is what percent of 40? So remember, once again, is equals percent times of. And if you notice what they're trying to ask, it's what percent. We don't have a percent there. 21 is, so 21 goes in the place of is, equals percent x times 40. Another way to write that would be 21 equals 40x. So if we're solving this equation for x, we're going to do both sides divided by 40. So to solve this, we need to do 21 divided by 40. You are going to be working with some decimals in this case. So remember, whenever we are working with decimals, the top number goes on the inside. 40 going to go on the outside. 40 doesn't go into 21. So we'll put our decimal point here. 40 does go into 210. It goes in there 5 times. Subtract 200. We're left with 10. Pull down another 0. 40 goes into 100 twice. Subtract 80. And it goes into 200 exactly 5 times. So we get x equals 0.525. Now, when we get 0.525, think about what we are trying to find. We are trying to find the percent. And we get a decimal here, 0.525. What do you think we need to do with that 0.525? Anytime we are trying to find the percent, we should get. And so what we need to do with this decimal is change it back to a percent. So change it to a percent. So if we think about it, if we change a number or a percent to a decimal, we move the decimal point 2 times to the left. If we're going to change it back to a percent, we need to move our decimal point 2 times to the right. And so move the decimal point 2 times to the right. So it's going to end up being 52.5%. So when we are changing a decimal back to a percent, we move the decimal point 2 spots back to the right. So 52.5% will be our answer here. Skip a question. We're going to look at the next one. 13 is 26% of what number? So once again, we have our percent equation is equals percent times of. So in this case, we know that we've got 26%. Change 26% to a decimal, 0.26. And 13 is, so it's going to be 13 equals 0.26 times x. 13 equals 0.26x. So think about solving an equation. On our last one, whenever we were solving for x, we divided by the number in front of x. We're going to do the same thing. Even though it's a decimal, we're still going to divide both sides by 0.26. So 13 divided by 0.26 cancels off and leaves us with x on the right-hand side. So we go ahead and divide this. 13 goes on the inside, 0.26 on the outside. We need to move our decimal point over twice to get rid of it in the 0.26. And that also means we should add 2 zeros to 13 and make it 1300. And then we go ahead and start our division. 26 goes into 135 times. And that's actually 5 times exactly. So we're left with zeros. 26 goes into 0 times. And so our answer is going to be x equals 50. 13 divided by 0.26. So 13 is 26% of 50. That's what we're saying. Okay, so using this percent equation, is equals percent times of. You all go ahead and answer those 3 questions. Okay, so our first one there, what percent of 150 is 27? What percent of 150 is 27? So we are going to make this equation. We're trying to find the percent. Is 27, so 27 equals percent x times 150. So 27 equals 150x. So we're going to divide both sides by 150. So we do 27 divided by 150, and you should get 0.18, sorry. 0.18 equals x. Last thing, if we get a decimal, what should we do with it? Change it back to a percent, and so 18% would be our answer. When we get 0.18, change that back to 18%. All right, what number is 6% of 200? Is our next one. What number is 6% of 200? So for this one, we have the percent, and remember 6%, you move it 2 times to the left, which means you've got to put that 0 in front of there, so it's 0.06. 0.6 is 60%. So make sure 6% is written as 0.06. And so whenever we make our equation of 200, 200 is of, so it's going to be 0.06 times 200 equals x. So all we have to do is 200 times 0.06. Whenever we multiply, we get x equals 12. So 12 is 6% of 200. And then our last one there, 84% of what number is 39? We have is 39, so 39 equals 84%, write that as a decimal, 0.84. So 39 equals 0.84 times x. So to figure out this one, we need to divide both sides by 0.84. We do 39 divided by 0.84. Make sure 39 goes on your inside, and then you got to move your decimal point 2 times to the left there. You should get x equals 46.4. X equals 46.4. Okay. So those are those three. We got one more to look at, which is a word problem. It says a survey found that 36% of people prefer comedies over action movies. If 450 people prefer comedies, how many people were surveyed? So we have our equation is equals percent times of, or part equals percent times whole. We've got to figure out what pieces do we have. One is easy to see. We know we've got the percent, 36%. So remember, change 36% to a decimal, 0.36. So equals 0.36. Okay, then we've got to figure out, all right, do I have part or whole for this one? 450 people preferred comedies. How many people total were surveyed? Well, comedy, the number of people that prefer comedies, this is not everybody, is it? This is just a portion of everyone who was surveyed. And so that's going to be part, okay? Because that's just part of who was surveyed. We're trying to find the total number of people surveyed, so we're trying to find the whole. So that's our equation. 450 equals 0.36 times x. We're going to divide both sides by 0.36. And then we're going to do 450 divided by 0.36. I'll go ahead and give that to you all. It's 1,250, 1,250. So out of that 1,250 people who were surveyed, 450 people, or 36%, preferred comedies. Okay, so that is the percent equation. So last thing that I will mention, work on the practice problems dealing with the percent equation. But just know that you can use the proportion that we did yesterday, or you can use the equation that we did today. Either one that works, that's the one I want you to use. Okay, so you can decide, would you rather use the proportion is over of equals percent over 100, or would you rather use this equation to figure out these problems? Whichever one is easier, that's what I want you to use going on. So practice some with this, and then you can decide which one you would rather use.